Where do I point? There, there. Does it work? Are you seeing anything? What point? Ah, there we go. Hello. Yeah, I'm a neuroscientist, but I'm gonna start by talking about Formula One. She saw that coming. She knows. Because I love Formula One. And because Formula One has the reputation of not being the most diverse and inclusive environment. One of the things that I specialize in is high-performance culture. How do you build a high-performance culture? And to find out how to do that, I studied Formula One teams for a number of years. So I learned a lot about how these teams operate. And I became a bit of a I was a fan of the sport since I was little, but there's one person on the grid who doesn't belong there. Does anybody know who this is? Any Formula One fans in the room today? Any Max Verstappen fans here today? What do you think of Lewis? Not your choice. All right, well, I get that. For those that don't know, Max and Lewis have been in a bit of a battle, particularly in 2021. Right now, Max he just has a better car, so there's not much of a battle going on right now, but it is what it is. It is what it is. Yeah, but Lewis Hamilton was not supposed to be in Formula One. Lewis Hamilton doesn't belong in Formula One. Lewis Hamilton was poor and black. That pretty much disqualifies you from being in Formula One. And yet he's there. And I find that fascinating. Imagine how good he must have been to overcome all those barriers that he had to face on his way up to Formula One. And for those that don't know, he was kind of sort of adopted by Ron Dennis, who was leading McLaren at the time. And Ron Dennis, rich white guy, he sponsored him. And obviously Lewis owes his career to him, so he's thankful. I don't know how Lewis feels about Ron Dennis, but I heard Ron say in an interview that the only reason that he invested in Lewis was because he was bored and he was looking for a side project. So, the most successful driver, sorry, Max fans, in the history of the sport, Max might get there, not there yet, was a side project because someone in power was bored. This is why I care about diversity and inclusion, because how many Lewis Hamiltons are out there? And I'm not talking about Formula One anymore, I'm not talking about all of your industries. How many Lewis Hamiltons are you missing because of the barriers that they face on their way to the top? This is why I care about it. I care about bringing out the best in people, bringing out potential. But some people have more barriers than others. And one of the barriers that people face is bias. So diversity is, you probably know this one, you have a seat at the table. You're welcome to come in. Come on in, you can sit down. Inclusion is also having a voice at that table. That's where it often goes wrong. You're welcome to come in as long as you shut up or say what we say. We're going to teach you how things are done around here. That happens a lot, right, when people are brought in. So this is diversity, that's inclusion. Bias is why some voices are louder. It's all very natural, though. It's normal to have bias, it's necessary to have bias. So that's what I want to explain to you a little bit, because I think once you understand that, it will hopefully normalize the conversation around bias. Because right now we see it as one of those things that we don't talk about. We don't know, others have it, I don't have it. It's not, no, I did the course. I don't have bias anymore. I've read about it, I don't have it anymore. The title of this talk is Having a Brain Means You're Biased. I am truly convinced of that. I have bias, you have bias, we all have it. So I hope that by the end of this talk, which will hopefully, I think I'll be done on time, I think it'll be good. You will understand that it's normal to have it, but that there are ways to mitigate bias when you want to, when you have to make important decisions. I have a couple of questions for you, though, before I get into the explanations. Which statement that you see on your screen right now is true? Globally. We're talking globally. The first statement is men are more likely to die during natural disasters. The second, there's a point to my madness. The second is women are more likely to die during natural disasters. And the last one is men and women are equally likely to die during natural disasters. Who thinks women are more likely to die? Why do you think it's women? Yeah, go ahead.
I think because women are less opportunities. drowning or more vulnerable?
Okay, because women have fewer opportunities and are in, yeah, maybe, but it's going to be a lot of running around them for you. And women have fewer opportunities and are more vulnerable. All right, any other reasons for picking women? Yeah, go ahead. They care for the others, yeah, they're the ones who take care of the kids, right? Same, yeah? They what?
They were teaching other things.
Oh, yeah. They were taught other things, all right? Any other reasons?
They'll probably get less help when financial disasters happen. You need the men to make it better, and therefore the healthcare will probably be more provided to the men.
Okay, yeah. Who thinks it's men? Because not everyone's hands went up. So, yeah, right here in the front.
Yeah, so I think it depends on the sort of disaster, but which is women and children first.
Mm-hmm.
That gets saved because of the idea that they need to take care of the children. And
Right. Yeah, so women and children are saved first, which means men, depending on the disaster, are more likely to die. All right, any other reasons? Yeah.
I think men because of socialization, because of having to be heroic.
Right, men might die sooner because they have to be heroic, and also maybe because they're like first responders are often male. Yeah. Yeah.
women usually have ability when it comes to type of situations that allows them to think out of the box.
Men just walk into the tsunami. All right, women are more creative, which allows them more opportunities to escape, okay? Any other thoughts? Who thinks that there is no difference at all? Yeah, cautious hand. Why do you think there's no difference?
Because you don't know the situation.
Yeah.
So it can be any of them. It can be, what if there's a town and the natural disaster is there, but there are 30,000 men there and 50,000 people.
Yeah.
Probably more men will die.
Right. So it's random. It's random. Who dies during a natural disaster is random. Any other thoughts? Yeah.
I also come from a place that is hit by hurricanes a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I know about that research when the hurricane is named.
Shh.
Okay, I'm just
We're not going to get into that just yet. Almost another spoiler. What is it with people spoiling my work today? Okay. The answer to this question is women are 14 times more likely to die during a natural disaster. 14 times. Globally. This is different, obviously, in Europe, for example, where there are very few natural disasters and societies operate a little bit differently. But the study that I got these statistics from looked at different parts of the world, looked at natural disasters, looked at statistics, and then looked at the way society operated. And what they found was that, for example, there are parts of Bangladesh where women are not allowed to go outside by themselves. They have to be accompanied by their husbands. Their husbands are at work, they are in the home. Not only are you more vulnerable in your home, but there's another thing playing a role here, and that is that they often did not have radios or televisions in the home. And how is a natural disaster communicated? Radio or television. So they just don't know. And there are parts of, I believe it was Sri Lanka, where it is not usual for girls to learn how to climb trees or learn how to swim. It's just not something they do, something that boys do. But if there's a flood, what are two things that can save you? Being able to climb a tree or being able to swim. These are examples of what we call systemic bias. These are biases that are built into systems, built into societies. It's not something that I can neuroscience my way out of. This requires activism. This requires millions of people deciding that we're going to make a change. It is very important. I think that is where the big impact is. It is also impossible to do by yourself. So I want to focus on a different type of bias today. But first I have another question. Here we go with yours. Which hurricanes are deadlier? The theme of my talk is natural disasters. Maybe it's because I'm a tornado. I don't know. All right, who thinks that hurricanes with male names are deadlier? Okay then. Who thinks it's female names? All the hands. All right, I'm going to go somewhere over there. Someone, get up, speak. Why? Why female hurricanes? They are not. They are in fact not, no. So the naming of hurricanes is male, female, and then they use the letters of the alphabet. Yeah, go ahead. Underestimating. Interesting. Any other thoughts? Everyone is now just... Yeah, so she is saying we associate softness with female names. It is correct. For one, female hurricanes are deadlier. It's why the first one you think of is Irma, Katrina, Irene. Those are the big ones. Those ones, they make the news because they're deadlier, because bad news sells. It was a hurricane, nothing happened. That's not news. So female hurricanes are deadlier, but in the study that I got this from, which you read, they did an experiment and they asked people, are you going to evacuate, yes or no? And they asked people, Hurricane Alexander is coming, are you going to evacuate? And they asked, Hurricane Alexandra is coming, are you going to evacuate? People are much less likely to follow evacuation orders when a hurricane is named Alexandra. Aren't we weird? Like, why? And now you're all thinking, well, I wouldn't do that. Do you remember I think it was beginning of last year, we had our own tiny little hurricane type of storm. It was Kori. Why did we just call it Thor or something like that? So this is an example of gender bias, female names being seen as softer, less intimidating. It goes a little bit further than that because it's not just male, female, is it a strong name or a weak name? That's what it's more related to, which is why I wonder why they just not call all the hurricanes Thor, because when I hear Thor's coming, then I'm out of there. Anyway, I don't make the rules. So this is an example of what we call individual bias. This happens in all of our brains, and we all think that we're the exception. That's called bias blind spot, which is another bias. So it's normal to have that, but I want to explain why we have it. This is a very big simplification of reality, but for the purpose of this talk, I'm going to use this framework. We have two systems that operate in our brains when we make decisions. We have the expansive mind. The expansive mind is, we use it for our everyday decision making because it's fast. It's just we follow our gut feeling, we do things because we've always done them this way. It's automatic, you don't have to think about it. It's like when you get up, like what do you put in your coffee in the morning? Nothing? Would you ever put sugar in there? Way back. Why not anymore? It's disgusting. All right. Well, maybe you changed. How long ago was it last time you had sugar in your coffee? 20 years ago. You don't know what happens in 20 years. But because you're like, I've always done it this way, I think 20 years ago I found sugar disgusting, so I'm just not going to do that. That's your expansive mind. And I think we should be thankful that we have an expansive mind, because otherwise you would be thinking every single morning, I wonder if I like sugar. So this helps you to function. It helps you to function because you make so many decisions every single day. I tried to find a number. Nobody has ever been able to figure out how many decisions we make on a daily basis, but it's a lot. It is a lot. So our expansive mind is very prone to errors. It is biased by nature because it doesn't look at all the available data. It just looks at how do I feel or how have I always done it. Then we have our detail mind. Now our detail mind we use for complex decision making. It's slow, it's effortful, which means that it takes you a while to make a decision because the detail mind is indecisive. It wants to make sure that it does things right. I use my detail mind for anything related to the tax authority. Because I want to get it right, because I have 2 nationalities and they will come and get me if I get it wrong. So the detail mind we use for big, important decisions that are complicated. That makes it slow, but that does make it more reliable. I say more and not reliable, period, because it doesn't matter what type of decision you make, it will always be impacted by bias. It is everywhere. These are subconscious processes. Bias is a subconscious process. It will creep in and you won't know it. Because if you did, you could do something about it quite easily. Well, This was supposed to be a quiz, but I see that the formatting of my slides is helping me. It's fine, Bogdan, that you gave the spoiler this morning because it's right there on the screen. We did a panel session this morning and Bogdan shared a nice statistic. I was like, that was a question on my talk. Anyway, I'm going to give you this one and then I'm going to wait to go to the next slide. So when you know that your eyes, your ears, all your senses collect information, right? We collect about 11 million bits of information every single second. It's a lot of information. So that's what's thrown at you. It's not, you don't draw it in, it just comes at you all the time. 11 million bits of information. Now. So that's 33 million bits of information. How many of those bits, and the people from the panel session this morning, if you remember, you're excluded from participating. How many of those 11 million bits of information do you think you can process consciously? What? I heard a number, but I couldn't. 40? 40, okay. Any other thoughts? 40 out of 11 million? Don't be scared, you'll get it wrong anyway. 3? We're all very low with the numbers. Does anybody think it's like 1 million or something? No, you're all okay. You're all influenced now. Well, you almost got it right with 40. It is 50. 11 million bits of information every single second, and you can only process 50 of them. Having a brain means you're biased. You have to. If you did not have biases in your thinking, you would not be able to survive in a world that is dominated by information exchange all the time. It's normal to have bias. It's necessary to have bias. You won't survive, as Bogdan said, you won't survive without bias. You will go crazy. Actually, relating back to the neurodiversity talk, people on the autism spectrum, they process information differently. And they can get overstimulated because their filters work differently from ours. And that overstimulation has to do with the limited capacity of the brain, and they get more. They get more of that information thrown at them consciously than they can process. And that can become troubling and problematic for them. So it's good that we have these biases. But obviously, when it comes to hiring, when it comes to diversity, when it comes to inclusion, we want to limit the impact of those biases. This is a pretty unclear picture, but it's one of my favorite images on the internet. It's the Cognitive Bias Codex. You can Google it, I did too. And if you Google it and you download it, if you click on every single little thing here, each little line here is one form of bias. And you can click on it and then it will explain to you what it is. It's really insightful. I believe that there are 188 on there. I haven't counted them though, so that's bias, but I think it's true. So far we have identified about 188 biases in our brain that all impact our decision making every single day. Now on that depressing note, I have 5 more minutes. So I'm not going to get into specific biases. I just don't have the time. I would love to, though, because I love talking about it. But if you want to know more, connect on LinkedIn or wherever you want to connect. But what I do want to say is, if you want to do something about this, if you want to train your brain to, 1, become more aware of biases, and 2, mitigate their impacts, it's going to require your frontal lobe. Because many of the biases that we have are evolutionary, which means the middle parts of our brains, including the amygdala. The amygdala is one of the most important brain areas that we have. It regulates our stress response. And just to give you a tiny little bit of insight, in-group, out-group bias is pretty much the first bias that kicks in whenever we meet someone. You place them in your in-group, you are like me. Or you place them in your out-group, you are not like me. It happens through the amygdala. And if you put someone in your out-group, what your amygdala does is it will produce a stress response, which tells you, ooh, there is a threat here somewhere. I need to be careful. And this goes way beyond skin color. I'm sorry, I can't stop myself. I have to share one study because a lot of people think that black and white and skin color, like that's how we exclude people. Definitely, it's one of the ways we exclude people. But there are many different ways we do it as well. There was a study in the United States where they put people of different skin colors into an MRI scanner, and then they scanned their brains as they were viewing pictures of people who also had various skin colors. And they measured activity in the amygdala. The more active your amygdala is, the more you have a stress reaction. So the more you feel threatened by whatever it is that you are seeing, because that's what your amygdala does. What they found was that there was one group within the group of pictures that they showed that triggered the biggest stress response in the entire group. Can you guess which group that was in terms of gender and skin color? Sorry? Black men, yes. Black men are threatening. Not just the white people, though. The black people who were in the scanner had a similar stress response to the white people who were in the scanner. And that is interesting because that shows you bias goes beyond skin color. It's much deeper than that. Any idea why black men would be seen as more threatening to anybody, regardless of skin color, in the United States? Yeah? The news. Yes. Which relates to a whole lot of other biases like availability bias. The first thing that pops up is the thing that must be true. That's availability bias. If you watch the news in the United States, then you're going to think that every black man is out to kill you. So these people in the scanner, their in-group wasn't based on skin color. Their in-group was based on killer, criminal, threatening. And they did not consider themselves to be killers or criminals or threatening. And because that was the distinction that they used at that time, black men were put in their out-group. So this is an important bias to understand because this is the first one that you will encounter whenever you interact with anyone, including people that you want to hire or a team that you are leading. So it's important to be aware of that. If you want to do something about it, as I said, you're going to have to use your frontal lobe. Your frontal lobe has executive functions, problem solving, critical thinking. All the rational behaviors that we show are mediated or at least influenced by the frontal lobe. So you can do things rationally, consciously, like if you have to make an important decision, appoint a devil's advocate. It's a very simple thing that you can start doing tomorrow. This doesn't cost you any money. If you have to make an important decision, choose one of your team that's going to be the one who's going to challenge everyone. It's their role. And the reason it helps to do that is because if you're actually the one who's challenging the decision without being appointed, you're going to be seen as annoying because you're making the decision more difficult. It doesn't have to be that difficult. We're all agreeing, so let's just do it. That's how we operate, because the faster we can make a decision, the better it is, or so we think. So appoint a devil's advocate. That could be for hiring, that could be for promotions, that could be for what project are we going to do, what budget are we going to have next year. Like those types of important decisions, make sure that there is someone challenging the status quo. And another thing that was also mentioned in one of the talks this morning, if you have to make an important decision, make sure that you include diverse perspectives. Find people who are different from each other in as many different ways as possible. Ethnicity, skin color, gender, neurodiversity, any category that you can think of. Make sure people are different, because then you get different perspectives. And the more diverse the group is, the better your decisions will be. And the reason this is so effective is because everyone has biases, but all our biases are different. So true inclusion is about throwing all those biases into the mix and then having a really good conversation about them, making sure that everyone is heard. So those are two small things that you can, I mean, I can talk about this for 4 hours. I won't, because I have 2 minutes, as you just told me. So I'm gonna stop here and say thank you and ask if there are any questions. We have 2 minutes, so that is one question, I guess. Thank you. Does anyone have a question? Okay, that means I either did really well or really not well. Really well. I'm going to go for the first one as well, just to make myself feel good. Thank you guys very much.